You're listening to Talking Threat Intelligence, a podcast dedicated to uncovering the new challenges of today's threat landscape. Each episode, we connect with some of the world's leading practitioners to share stories from the front lines of corporate security. And now, on to the show.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Talking Threat Intelligence, sponsored by LifeRaft. I'm your host, Robert Value, and my guest today is Chris Groh, managing partner at LeMareschal. Now, Chris, the other week we were batting around some episode topics, and one thing that you said is that as an EP agent out in the field, you're often frustrated with the quality of the intelligence that you're receiving from analysts. And I thought that was a really interesting point and something I wanted to break down further. So as it relates to close protection, what do you think analysts should stop doing?
Analysts have been trained to look up information, straight information, not so much that which is tailored to our particular operation or our particular job or client. And the thing that needs to stop is don't just do random reports of an area. Granted, some of those things may or may not be pertinent in your report coming forward to us. But the biggest thing we're concerned about is what affects us most, what has the most relevance to our job. And quite often when you get people who are in intelligence analysis or protective intelligence, they either have a military background, which is fantastic, but the priorities in the past have been quite significantly different than what is necessary for civilian or corporate world. And so when we come forward, the biggest thing we would like to portray is please, if someone with our background that then gets into protective intelligence is really, really an asset, because then they know what to look for exactly in the link analysis connected to that they will then utilize to pass on reports to us that are critical and of relevance and really add to our operation, rather than it's nice that it's raining in another country, or it's nice that they had a problem in this city, but we're here and need that information here.
You know, there's that culture gap, there's that communication gap that we often hear about between the EP team and the analyst team back in the office. And so that's kind of what I wanted to dive a little bit more into this topic, because I think we can get a lot of good takeaways from people that maybe have been on one side of the fence or the other, and that everyone can learn more and break down some of that communication gap. Can you give me some interesting examples of a lot of the irrelevant, perhaps, intelligence that you've been given as a protector out in the field?
So while I can't go into details, NDAs and all those things notwithstanding, but we had an operation where I was part of an operation, a large medical group. Part of the thing was a large team of protectors for a certain number of medical professionals, high-level CEOs, things like that, because there was a threat. There was a direct threat. Now, when we started to put all that together, the intelligence coming in was good, but because it was coming from someone not on the ground and someone not directly involved, it became irrelevant. Some of it didn't apply. Like, we were great. We knew the news. Okay, that's something to add, but it doesn't really help us. And we found, fortunately, I suppose, that the clients and the clients' assistants and other employees in the same building were actually doing better link analysis and digging out of their sense of real concern and fear. They started to, and of course, some of them go down rabbit holes that don't even exist, but they also brought forward an intense amount. We had to weed through it, but the intense amount of intelligence that had been brought forward. So in this case, it wasn't so much that someone, I guess, made a mistake, but they were just putting forward information because they were miles away or because they weren't on the ground being able to dig for us as deeply as we needed. The information was nice, something to add to what we had, but we were getting better information on the ground from some of the people there because they have the dog in the fight, right? They have concerns in the fight and need to get that information. Another example was I was traveling with someone, an island area, and the information was there was storm situations present and there were a lot of other things involved. And when that goes down, we kind of like to know what's really happening right where we're at. Right? It doesn't really matter what's happening in Malaysia, Japan right now. We're not there. While that's nice for a team, perhaps, that's there, the information coming forward is what's all going on in this area. As we all know, when those kind of things go down, the local, I'll say, the flora and fauna of the local neighborhood becomes a little hairy. And so knowing what's happening in the area, crime statistics that are immediately happening, and or some of the storm and meteorological things that are happening, we need those. And so that didn't happen because there was kind of a step up. It took a few times of us calling them to say, hey, we're here. This is what we need. please stay on top of that. And so then it changed. But at first it was information that might be nice on a generic report, but not for us. We need something specific. And considering how critical it was, that was more helpful.
Well, I think that local reporting is just so important because, in any city or country, things can vary from one side of the country to the other, one side of the city to the next, one part of the street to the next. And that local insight, whereas, when you get some of those generic country risk reports or something like that, it's like, says the country's safe. Okay, but what about that neighborhood down the street where someone might be walking through or your client might be nearby?
That was actually several trips back. That was actually what happened. The city itself, they think, well, we've got the general area, like the county we've got it covered. But they don't understand that once we're on the ground, and this requires communication on the part of the EP team as well, the team lead, someone who's the detail lead, sending information to your GSOC or your analysts to tell them, hey, this city specific to where they're staying actually has a nice side of town. And once you cross one boulevard, it's not the nice side of town. And being able to stay on top of all that so that you can find out and tell your people, if you have the ability to use apps that have like geofencing and things like that, that works great. You set up a geofence, you set down the situation, you tell your clients, if you go outside of this and your phone pings at you and says, no, get back inside the yard, that's what you need to do. But it's that close. It can be even by the city. We have even by the semi-city. It's like on this side of the hill is good. The moment you cross over, it's not. And we went out driving with the drivers. You can distinctly see the difference. Whatever reason for that demographical change, it's there. And it's very, very critical to know that.
Yeah. What are the kind of things, and I can understand why, I don't want to get mad at the OSINT analysts, but what are the kind of things that you think they fail to think about that's very obvious to you when you're in the field that you wish you could tell them?
Oh boy, well, it depends on job to job. If I go to an area where people are the concern, then we need to do link analysis and dig into the people, and specifics those who may or may not be our persons of interest. Stay on top of that, track that, do link analysis connected to them. Occasionally there's something as close as they just won't dig deep enough. One of the jobs we were on, there was a situation where they showed us the client, or they showed us, the POI at that point, and why the POI was upset with the client. Okay, we understand that. But then there was kind of like, well, and he's got a sister and a brother and the dad. And okay. But at this point in time, we have to dig a little deeper. Anytime there's a family situation in particular, you have to go deeper. And there wasn't a depth to the link analysis search. And when you went back, we did it later on our own. When we went back and went, oh, there's this cousin's former roommate, which sounds like a joke, but seriously, you get back, he's part of a vicious hate group, and they have offered to do whatever's necessary to support the family. Well, that's kind of critical. We'd kind of like to know that. And it's not so much the fault, and I don't want to call anyone lazy, but there's a certain familiarity and a complacency that they develop when they think they've dug deep enough. And sometimes you need to dig a little deeper. I'd rather you dug so deep that it starts to get fanatical and we go, okay, you're done. You've gone too far. But at least at that point, I know this person's serious. And in some of your GSOCs, you'll find somebody who's really dedicated to that. They love to find that stuff. And then there's people who do their job well, but they're just not clued into our side. They have education in it, and or they have, again, military or government where a certain parameter needed to be followed. In our case, it's different, and we just need them to know this is what we do.
Well, that gets into the personality for what's an A player when you're bringing on talent, right? And what I've kind of learned hiring people, it's like an A player for one role might not be one for another. And I think when you're bringing on the best OSINT analysts, it's just people that are, like you said, fanatical about digging into those little details and turning over every stone. Like any role, you got to think of what are those things that was going to make someone outstanding at this role. And that just exactly what you said is that fanatical attention to detail.
It's almost like you really need that IT cyber nerd who just loves to come up to you and go, I know something you don't know. You want them to almost be like that because you know what? I need to know what I don't know. Tell me, and they're all excited because they found this new thing. Now, occasionally it doesn't apply, but once they start to have a mindset to understand how, like when I say I need to know about the uncle because the uncle's got this hate group, that hate group could then hate the client. There's 2 steps away. Sometimes it's 3 steps away. But when they start to understand how many steps away can you go until you find peaceful people or peaceful situations? Good. That's where I need you to go to, and then stop, and we'll go from there.
Right. I kind of want to stretch this out a little bit bigger, go into like the type of work that you do when you're preparing for a travel assignment in terms of the intelligence that you're looking for on a generic job of any course. obviously particular jobs are going to be different from job to job. But I think that would be a good insight for someone listening at home to be like, okay, what are you doing ahead of time? Because that might give an OSINT analyst listening to this a good idea of what they should be working on. So let's dive into that maybe.
Sure. So on a regular basis, I mean, what I'd like to see versus what I get, that's quite and I don't know that evil can make that jump, but occasionally it does work that way. So I'm first going to talk about client. Who is he or she? Who are they connected to corporate wise? What have some of their personal decisions been in the last 6 months that obviously get blasted across social media and or the news? All of those things. What does their company have? What does their company have as policies? It gets very deep before you even leave hometown, because we need to know what all those things are, because what we think in America is a certain way of looking at it is not often seen in another country the same way. We as Americans, and I hate to say it this way, but I will, we're arrogant. We think the world is all about us. And we forget that when we take our attitudes and our opinions, which may or may not be correct for us, and take them somewhere else, that changes everything. So before I leave, I want to know a client. I want to know corporation he works for, or the purposes of his job and how it affects other people, maybe family members that are around the world, things like this, and start to prep all that. Because then when I say, okay, and we're going to country A, occasionally you'll get an intel analyst who really knows what they're doing, and they'll call back and go, you should never go there. Because by the time they looked at that country has got hate people on the ground holding giant signs at the airport in direct opposition of, say, the company that he works for, or not even the company, but what's happening when we talk about things like global warming and we talk about whatever else. Nobody's mentioning Ford or Chevy, but when you bring forward a Ford or Chevy diesel manager and you fly him into a country that's green from stem to stern, everybody's going to protest him. But nobody thinks about that maybe at first. And so those are the kind of things. And then we start to do our electronic advance from here. So we have intel chasing down things there. Hotels, normal neighborhoods, who's doing what to whom there. Crime rates sometimes apply, sometimes it doesn't. That usually is hotel placement. Because if we're going to be there, I need to know, well, if you just picked a gorgeous hotel that's in the worst part of town, we're doomed. We're literally doomed. Don't do that. And then start to place it from there. And of course, as we do, we put a physical team on the ground as well. Normally, there will be an advanced team that gets there a day in advance, runs all the routes, and that helps the intel group. Hey, there's this great hotel. Great. Yeah, okay, I just drove it. It's a battleground. We're not staying there. So again, this is where the two must get together, because the intel you pull down raw off cyber and IT may not correspond or cooperate with what you physically see on the ground.
Chris, that was a great answer there. There's like 10 different things that I noted down. So different places that I could take this conversation next. I guess one thing I want to ask, because I don't want to put all the weight on the poor OSINT analysts working remotely here. I want to throw a little bit back at the EP team. And I want to ask, like, what are things that the protector and the protection detail can do to help the OSINT analysts back in the office do their job a bit better?
I think it's giving the information quite often, unless you know a little more personally who your OSINT people are or your intelligence analysts are, you're going to need to send them things like, I just got off of a job. And right off the bat, I said, hey, would you do me a favor, please? Track Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. So, all the social medias, LinkedIn, if you want to, on this name, this corporation, in this city, at this hotel. Now, those 4 things right there, if you put them out there for keyword searches, will then trigger if anybody says, oh, yeah, so-and-so, I think is at this hotel, blah, blah, blah. We got to give him a visit, right? That triggers, it pops up. We may or may not see it at that point. It's assisting them with the information, like I said, that they may or may not think about. If I know my analyst really well, then I know I don't have to do that. I can give them a phone call quick and say, hey, it's Chris. I'm out here on this certain detail right now. This is the guy. You're tracking kind of this, and this. Yeah, man, we got it. Okay, good. I don't have to. But occasionally they're just running the normal report. Say the crime status in that city is this. And, they're giving you good information as a generic piece, but not giving you the information that applies right now to your client. I mean, aside from celebrities who maybe they want the buttons pulled off their shirt and they want everybody to try and touch them. And, would you please sign my name, that body part? There's not that kind of thought process. CEOs would like to whisk into town quietly, do their meetings, power meetings, get it done, get on the plane, get home, and get out of there 5 minutes early. That requires a whole different thought process than, well, we're just going to kind of bluster through the crowds, if that makes sense.
Right. I had Jerry Hying on the podcast recently, and we had a great chat about celebrity protection and things like that. And not necessarily though in that world, they still they're very worried about fans being a little too touchy feely sometimes that they got to deal with, but different challenges from that world.
It is, yeah.
I kind of want to dive. I want to take this conversation now. I think there was a lot of great takeaways there on OSINT. I kind of want to go even bigger into the EP world if we can. What is one of the biggest challenges that you're facing as a protector right now in the industry?
To be honest with you, quite often what we're finding in the business world as far as EP goes, close protection, is probably not so much. I mean, it's a challenge with OSINT. We need that information to be real. And I mean, we're going into that now. So we've already kind of brought that discussion. It's fresh on the table. But if we had to discuss something in the EP world, it's honestly the vetting of who we use. Whether for OSINT or whether it's for actual EP agents on the ground, driving companies, everyone can print up a great resume. Everybody can go online these days and print themselves a certificate that makes them look awesome. And there are people who, as you can see, I have nothing on the wall behind me because I really don't care what paperwork I have. I really, really don't. But the world seems to see it as, oh, he's this and he's that. That's fine if you want those. But the point is vetting these people to go, are they truly in a person on the ground that can provide this? And I say this all the time. There's three emotional things that we deal with when we're really dealing with a client properly. One, there's emotional surveillance. We step into a room, we see the client, we see the surroundings of him, his bosses, his VPs, even his family or close friends. And then we use emotional intelligence, because then we take surveillance, which we've gathered, and we make intelligent decisions out of it. We take it and we break it down. How do I work with this guy? What does he need? Does he want to talk sports, or does he want to just shut up and not? The only conversation will be, good morning, sir. We're still going to this event. Okay. And then we're shut up, right? We don't say a word. And then after that, it's emotional manipulation. And people say, oh, manipulation, that's a horrible word. Yeah, I need him to go with my plan as much as we can. I know we live, as I say jokingly, at the whim of the madman. We live at their discretion. They want to go here, we go here. We want to go there, we go there. But in the meantime, we're planning it safely. And so being able to read that and then manipulate him. Sir, this might be a good idea if we, okay, fine. And you slowly move him so that he gets done what he gets done, but you're safe. And those kind of things, as far as picking good, solid teams, in the past, there's been the good old boy system. If I can branch here for a second and talk about this, there's always been the good old boy system, which a lot of people have complained about. Well, it didn't allow as many women in, which is a big thing that Denny and I hit on, or it didn't allow some of the new guys to join. There's two sides to that. Yes, there was that, but there was also a side of that became, that's how we vetted people. You can only hide a abhorrent personality for so long before it comes out of you. And then we go, he's that kind of person. Okay, we can't use him with the client, or we can't. And there's that way to vet. So over time, you earned your rank to be a part of the team. And I think there's a lot of people who these days will walk in with a resume 3 pages long that looks awesome, 2 or 3 referrals from their closest friends. Of course, they're going to say they're fine. And then they're on the team. And then you get close to the client, and this person fouls up in what we call a professional blunder, whether it's talking too much, it's making decisions, it's trying to be the bodyguard. If you ever talk to Kent Moyer, he's very, very big on the term bodyguard. You suddenly think the client's your friend. They're not your friend. They've dealt with hundreds, maybe even thousands like you. You're replaceable in the next 5 minutes. The only reason you're not is because he takes a liking to how you treat him and how you take care of him. It's that simple. And it's friendly, not friends. So those things wrap into, and I could go on and on forever, taking pictures of you with the client's jet. I can pull down a tail number, and I have apps that will pull up everything on that person in 5 minutes. I know where the plane's at. I know where it's going next. All these things to us are the fall down. The best professionals in the world, you never see a single thing.
That's really interesting in terms of like some of the things that you're looking for. When you're talking to someone that you're thinking about bringing onto your team, what are the kind of questions that you're asking to get a sense of who this person might be and might be a good fit for this industry?
I would like to right off the bat, they don't name drop. That's probably one of the most critical things, because it talks about personality. Now, when I talk about it, you and I will talk about things. You notice I never mention a client name. I never mention a company name. I probably don't even mention why we're there. And the location I usually give as just some place in the world geographically in the Southern Hemisphere, right? I'm not saying anything because, one, it's not anybody's business. 2, you've signed NDAs until you went blind, and confidentiality and discretion is critical. Absolutely critical. So moving forward, when you sit down with these people, you start to talk about things that they've done, things that they've trained in. You want to see where they are at. This is a zero ego job. Now, I'm sure that if you go searching across LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, even Twitter, you will see the big names in the industry with a lot of postings and a lot of, I'll say, posturing. This is about zero ego. For those of us who understand the business, you're the gray man. You're in the shadows. You're in the cracks. You shouldn't be seen on camera every 5 seconds. But as Jerry Haying, of course, would probably say, Elijah Shaw, some of those in celebrity protection, you can't help it. I understand that. But at the same time, if you need validation, if your self-worth is built around, hey, guess who I worked for, or who I did, or this is not your craft, period. Go work at, I don't know, Men's Warehouse. Then you can say you're the best guy that picks a suit for someone. But this is the job where the only personal satisfaction you get is when they go wheels up. The last thing he said to you was, listen, I just want to thank you so much. This trip went so smooth. I felt comfortable to actually get my job done. I'm going home 3 hours early. Thank you. There it is. But nobody gets to hear that conversation. Nobody gets to see that. You have to take personal sense of self-satisfaction in that went really good. And as we always say, the best detail you just did was the last one. Move forward. We got a new one to go.
It always gets me a little frustrated when I'm cruising around on Instagram and I see one of the protectors, or probably more aptly named in that case, like bodyguard, something less professional than that, just posting away on the job they're doing and talking about who they're working for or whatever. And you're like, what are you doing, bud? This is like the bare minimum part of your job. Is I shouldn't be able to figure that stuff out if I'm just cruising around on Instagram and here you are giving everything away.
Part of the Intel thing we talk about here, Intel Analysts, it doesn't take much to pull people apart. Yeah. They just want to tell you how cool they are. Recently, a protection team that I've followed for a long time, I know who their clients are. They're mostly European, but they also travel into South America, Central America, things like that, doing a job, posting their thing. Of course, they don't show faces. But unfortunately, as the camera pans, I can pull down information. Like as he passes by the vehicle in front of him, it's a plate. That plate is registered to a state, county, government, whatever, that I can pull down and figure out where they're at. They pass by 3 signs. I can take that sign and put it into reverse picture searches, and it pulls it up immediately because some tourist at one point in time took that same picture. Oh, you're in Venezuela, you're in this city, you're traveling here, and you look up, it was posted an hour ago. Well, guess where I think you are? And this is where Intel Analysts can really play games and figure stuff out for us. Hey, by the way, so-and-so is in there and blah, blah, blah. Hey, nice to know. Thank you. Right? So you have to be very, very, I think at one point in time, Denny and I had done an interview with a guy that's a audio and video forensics guy. And he pulled it down to literally the grids for power within countries are different. And if they take a video, you can break the video down and watch the electronic pulses that you can't see with your normal eye. And that grid pulse tells you what part of the country they're in. So there's so many things that allow for this that, again, if you've got an Intel analyst who has the applications and perhaps the resources to do this, you can find a lot of information if you're motivated.
Yeah, I remember the story of John McAfee. I don't know if familiar with him. And he's in the jungle, I Belize or something. And it takes a photo and the journalist posts it up on Vice, and you just download the EXIF data and like there's the GPS coordinates. I mean, I can go down and within a foot of where that photo was taken this week. Easy peasy. I know where he's hiding. It's ridiculous.
This guy actually used that as one of his examples while we were doing the interview. He said he had him within 2 meters.
Now, let's take I want to spin this in another direction here. I just kind of want to see where you go with this. Looking kind of forward now, and I'd be curious your perspective as a protector. What's keeping you up at night right now? What's worrying you for 2023 or beyond?
I don't know that I have worries. One of the biggest things in our business is we have to, and it's an age-old movie line, but improvise, adapt, and overcome. If I'm going to be relevant in my industry, in my craft, I have to be able to adapt to anything. Let's take COVID in the past, for instance. A lot of people went into full panic mode because all they saw themselves doing was this close to the client all the time on his plane, flying with them. And all of a sudden, no one was flying. No one's going to big corporate meetings and seminars. I worked all through COVID because the company that I worked for, plus the side contracting that Danita and I do, started changing what we did for the client. You have to adapt to what's around you. And people are saying now IT is the adaptation. No, it's an addition. There's a difference. Physical need on the ground to protect the client still exists. Physical need with travel, doing advanced work and being on the ground. You can look up a roadmap on Google, Apple Maps, and then get there, and it's completely torn apart right now, and it won't show up sometimes. So those things still have to be done, but it's adapting to what can be done. We started doing a lot of RST. We started doing a lot of home searches and RTVA, risk, threat, and vulnerability assessments. I could sit in the guy's driveway, pull out his Wi-Fi, and jump right on it. And this is the same Wi-Fi he's using for, company information that's very critical and confidential. So you just shift. I don't stay awake so much at night concerned about things. I think the only thing that concerns me is, and who knows where it'll go, is if COVID or any other sickness starts to kick it into a different shifting gear and you watch these people struggle to get their businesses done and be able to travel or be able to get those things done. But that's out of our grasp. So in the meantime, you just prepare so that you're prepared to be the closest and best protection for the client and planner. We become all kinds of things. We're not just a planner. When you're a solo practitioner, as many of us do quite often, you're nearly the EA. Because you're out there with them, they're planning their day, you're telling them where they're going next because they got too many things on their mind. You're setting up the trips, you're watching for things as simple as, sir, when we go into this country, you're going to have to test for COVID 12 hours prior before we get there. They don't think of that. They get there and then they're stuck in the airport or there's just a hassle. So you have to think of all these things. But again, I don't know that I stay awake on anything at night because you have to plan for everything. My famous thing is, expect everything expect something, but anticipate everything and be prepared.
Well, I think about it like you mentioned with COVID as a great example. It's like, okay, we're not going to be able to travel anymore because the airlines are shut down, but now people are at home and you got to worry about the risk at home. Or, if you're doing business in Ukraine, if, the Russians invaded, so now you got to get people out. But if they don't invade, you're doing business there and you got to protect assets there and things like that. So no matter what's happening, it's just the different risks and you have to be able to respond to that appropriately.
Yeah, no, very true. It was interesting that when all that began, to speak of with Ukraine and Russia, I don't know that we knew of anyone directly involved. A lot of people were just going there to help rescue and move people, which is a little more random. I'm more specific, a little more surgical. Who is it I'm taking care of and why? That way you can be very specific with what you're doing. There's an awful lot of political mess there. And if you don't know exactly what you're doing, you may find yourself on the wrong side of the fence at any one point in time, which could be devastating and even lethal. But it was interesting. We had clients and or friends inside Russia. And it was like, ooh, this is going wrong. We need to get out of here. But it was interesting to me to hear all of them from, Moscow all the way to like Vladivostok, all the way across the country going, they don't care as long as we're doing our job and taking good care of us. They're actually treating us very well. Like no one, and these are people from different countries, some from the US, some from the EU. So right away it was, well, just keep your ear to the ground, keep your finger on the pulse, just watch. If anything comes up, please let us know. We'll start arranging for flights or evacuations. No harassment, as long as they stuck to their job. Now, the biggest thing was don't go snooping around, just stay out of it. This is a battle between two people that you are not a part of. Take care of your client, provide them with everything you normally do, mind your P's and Q's. If they ask to leave quietly, just leave. Don't start a war. But at the same time, being able to set that up and provide properly.
Right. All right, Chris, we're coming up on all the time that I promised to steal from you today. What is the one takeaway you want listeners to remember from our conversation?
I think the biggest thing would be considering you are that platform, you are that group that provides the necessary intel to us. It needs to be a cooperation. The EP team should communicate with you as an operator of the app and or an operator of a GSOC, but you have to communicate with them too. Even if it's a simple phone call to start the job off. Okay, we're providing information to company A. Reach out to company A, to the most pertinent person you feel would need to speak with you and go, what information can I give you about your upcoming trip or your situation? Maybe it's just around home that best handles what you need. What would be most relevant for you to know? Because then you're customizing, if you will, the package you're giving them. And then they feel like they're really cared for. They've been taken care of. You're actually looking into their world and taking care of them. And they, on the other side, feel, I've got the information I need to make good decisions, smart ones, keep people safe. And as an EP team, we would love that. We don't have to have long shower talks. All I need is a simple conversation. Like, what can we provide for you? What would be best? And then I provide back. After talking, we get it. So that would be a big thing for all intel analysts and protective intelligence people.
All righty. And how can listeners get in touch if they want to reach out?
So we've got info@LeMareschal.com. I've also got my personal email, CG at LeMareschal, as well as Danita's is DZG at LeMareschal. Any one of those emails, they can reach out to us direct. Send us an email. We'd love to chat or answer questions, whatever information they need.
All right. I'll be sure to include those in the show notes for anyone listening that wants to reach out. Chris, thanks for joining me today, man.
Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity. Take care.
Again, that was Chris Grow, managing partner at LeMareschal. Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking Threat Intelligence. Never miss an episode by subscribing on Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you get these episodes. And if you're looking for more insights on building a successful threat intelligence program, check out our website at liferaftinc.com/blog. That's liferaftinc.com/blog. And I hope you tune in next time.